Hello, and I forgot to turn on my light. There we go. We're starting this out great. There we go. Hello, and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Today we are joined by author of Dark Tides, JJ Marshall. Welcome, JJ.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my privilege. It's my privilege. So I was looking you up. And I'll get the first question out for us. Suck down some coffee, because knowing my luck today, I'll just spill that down the front of me. So tell me, and I find that this is the most interesting question, because what I want to hear about is how you kidnap your characters.
So a lot of times, like when I'm coming up with the ideas, they just literally come to me.
Uh-huh.
Most of my characters wind up getting kidnapped. Either it's from like a family member doing it or their nemesis, but lots of different ways. I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay. Oh, see, what I like to do is I do some research on it. I'm pretty sure you probably already know that since you're on the show. But what I like to do is do research. And what I find the most interesting is when I find interviews you've already done. And I like to look at your answers. And then I like to twist those to find new questions out of the answers you've given me. And one of the things you did, they asked you, and you had mentioned, I think it was in 2020, so it was last year, and you said kidnapping your own characters. And I was like, oh, really? So that's where that stemmed from. So I thought maybe you came at it as from a character aspect, and you would kidnap your characters and break them down for the way that you would write them. So that's where I thought that was. So you're basically saying that a lot of your books have them where they're being kidnapped?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, a lot of the stories
Okay.
there's a kidnapping aspect to it.
Oh, awesome. Would you say that because you've had it happen a few times, would you say that you become an expert at it?
No.
So there's no brands of duct tape that we should be getting or anything like that. Okay, got ya. All right. So I read that 5 years ago is when you established that you had reached a point where you wanted to approach writing more professional. What was the turning point that made that happen?
So, my very first book, I had a nightmare, and I was telling my best friend about the nightmare, and I was like, like all this stuff was happening, and she was like, that would be a really good book. I was like, yeah, you should write it. She was like, it's not my dream. You need to write that.
So this happened about 5 years ago then?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the nightmare maybe?
Sure.
Okay.
So in the nightmare, it was basically like aliens brought down the zombie apocalypse.
I'm liking it already.
And basically, crap hit the fan, and all I remember is seeing like metal floating and just like people running and loads of fire. But I actually wound up warping, I guess, the nightmare when I plotted out my very first book and based it off of that.
Nice. So, with your writing in mind, explain to me your outlining process. I got the sense from what I read about you that you're very detailed in your research and that you are very detailed as far as outlining, perhaps?
So, yeah, I kind of do it a couple different ways. So, I always have like a general outline of like, okay, this is what my plot is, this is what my middle is going to be, this is how it's going to end. And then I go into each character and I try to figure out who they are, what they look like, their personalities, and I just repeatedly will ask why, why. Okay, well, what happens here? Well, what about this or what about that? Until I get to a point where I can't answer those questions anymore.
Huh. Well, that would say making sure that you cover all your bases, right?
Definitely try to.
Uh-huh. Well, I would say I like I said, I read that you were very detailed on it. So trying to approach it from every angle as far as questioning each motive that you're making, extremely detailed, I would say. So, I think I read that one of your favorite books to read yourself from another author is House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig. Can you tell us?
Yes.
Can you tell me why?
The way she, how do I explain this? So,
Make it as detailed as possible.
so the way she comes up with like her concepts and her plot twists
Mm-hmm.
just blew me out of the water. Like I didn't see anything coming in that book, and every single time something happened, I was like, "No way! Now
Ah,
what?" Like I could never predict what was going to happen.
so you basically like the unpredictability of it.
Yes, and
Wonderful.
it had like a creepy aspect to it too that I was kind of vibing with.
Oh, nice. I know. A new one of mine just came out. I don't know if you know, and Jane Yellowrock. Mm-hmm. I love the series. If you've never read it, look it up. It is good. Um,
I'll have to look that one up.
it is. I really enjoy the audibles. I'll be honest with you. I really do. I have the paperbacks as well, but I really love the audibles. So talking about another one of your books, not one I'm reading. Although after I have been looking at Dark Tides, it might just be on my next list. Um, tell me and our listeners about your book Dark Tides and its creation, about exactly how it came about for you.
Sure. So, Dark Tides came about when I was like in a particularly low spot. I
Mm-hmm.
had just lost my job that I
Oh.
had worked at for several years, and I just kind of wanted to have something to escape into.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an idea a while back that I talked to a couple of different authors about doing a dark fairy tale retelling anthology crossover series. I know that's a mouthful to say.
Say it twice real fast. No, I'm just joking. All right, keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
So when I went and I was thinking about that, in this time where I really just wanted to escape, I was like, you know what? I haven't seen a whole lot of Little Mermaid retellings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to create one of my own. And I did a lot of research into like the Hans Christian Andersen original retelling or version of that story. And I thought of like how could I bring some of those aspects into this story and keep it true a little bit to like its original nature, but
Mm-hmm.
have it completely my own at the same time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Interesting. So, tell us a little bit about it. I mean, like, without giving away the entire story, give us a gist of the book itself. Not just its creation, but kind of like the storyline. Tell us the bio of the story.
Sure. So, you have sirens and humans, and they are at war with one another. Essentially, what happens is that the Siren King and the Land King have beef and kill a bunch of, really important characters in the very beginning, but we'll get into those characters later. And the Siren King's daughter, Aramis, takes the throne, and she's got this, vendetta out against the land. So she sends her sister up as a double agent spy to infiltrate the land and essentially take the throne out right from underneath them.
Mm. Now, I do believe that I saw a video that you had made for the book. Just a little, like a promo video. Was that used? Yes?
So I actually hired one of my very good friends, PJ, to create a book trailer, and I think that's the video that you're talking about.
I'll be honest, when I turned it on, I was like, God, I wish this was a movie. I was like, because hearing that she had to walk on land and go up and how she hated, and I was just like, oh man, I could so dive in this with this movie. I just need some popcorn and turn the lights out. Okay, so with your book in mind, I want to turn back time a little bit because I know that you have done some writing outside of your published work, but they are not published yet, okay? And the one I'm interested in is called Rose Bound. I think, like I said, I think this is an unpublished book that you wrote at, let me see if I get this right, 16?
No. So Rosebound's actually out.
Oh, it is out now.
That
okay.
Yep, that one's a published work.
Okay, but did you write it at 16 originally?
No, that was a different one.
Okay. Pause that, but put a pin in it. What was the book that you wrote at 16?
So I had a couple of them that I wrote at 16, and I wish I still had them. But one of them I called Gone Girl.
Okay.
And essentially that was like a girl lives in Hawaii. She gets swept under the waves and she wakes up and is in this underwater spy school type of deal.
Interesting. Now, now wait a minute. Would you say that book kind of inspired what you did now with Dark Tides?
Not necessarily. I think some of like the character names I probably used, but the concept altogether, no.
Okay. Okay. All right. I just heard spy, and you were talking about how the other one came up on land to take over the kingdom and kind of like a spy. So I was like, okay. All right. I'll shut up. Continue. You were talking about.
And then the second one that I worked on when I was younger was another alien-based story.
Okay.
And that one was like the aliens came down. So yeah, you can see there's a theme here. The aliens came down and they essentially were hunting down people and taking them and murdering them. And these two kids find out that this is happening and they're trying to bring it to light, and these aliens are coming after them.
Okay. So when you were asked what your favorite book that you had written, now, was that in reference to Rosebound?
Yeah, Rosebound is probably my favorite so far.
Okay, can you tell me why?
So Rosebound is, well, I co-wrote that book.
Okay.
It was just, it's my brain baby.
Now, your brand baby? So
no, my brain baby.
Oh, brain baby. Okay.
Yeah, like I put so much there was so much thought and effort. Like, not saying that there wasn't effort in the other books, but there was just so much that we worked on together, both Jess and I, and it took us, I want to say almost 3 years to write book one. And it was a lot of back and forth, okay, well, what about this? Or what about that? Or, that finally, when it all came together, we were like, holy cow, this is legit. This is it.
I just brought it up on my other computer, the one I've got in the corner outside where you're talking from. So I'm reading along to see the basis of the book. So so it's I'm just going to read it to the podcast. Ousted for being a human sympathizer, Prince Gavin was found himself in the belly of the underground, a world where ghouls rule and werewolves fight to the death. Interesting. Yes, I might have to just add this to my my wish list there. Okay, so basically that was your first book in general that you published.
That would actually technically be my third one. My very
third.
first book I took down.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So, what has been the most pivotal moment for you for your writing career that you would want to point out to new writers as a teaching moment in your career?
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Stories don't write themselves. So even though you feel like you're in a rut, just keep pushing through, because you can always edit, words that don't necessarily make sense, or as long as they're there, basically, is what I'm getting at.
Right.
What you can't edit a blank page.
Well, true that. Yeah, true that. It would be a little struggle on that.
A little bit.
So, what is it that happened for you, if I may ask, that makes you be that little bit of advice that you would want someone else to take?
My very first book that was out, Last Forsaken, I at one point wanted to scrap it. I wanted to give up on it, but I just kept pushing through, and it did have good feedback. But I never would have gotten to the point where I was like, okay, well, I'm going to keep putting books out if I had given up.
Right.
Like, it's all about basically pushing through and coming into your voice. And if you give up, you're never going to find that voice.
So, with that in mind, would you think that you would ever reach the point that that first book would come back out, that you would republish?
Funny you should ask that. I'm actually reworking it to bring back out into publication.
Wonderful. Well, you will have to let me know, and I will help push that along. So, for a final question here, what do you want our listeners and your readers to take away from this interview about you as a writer? Something that we would not know. Give us some dirt. Some clean, wholesome dirt. Clean, wholesome dirt, but dirt.
And as myself as a writer, I like to write darker fiction.
Nice.
So if you are going to venture down that, just beware that you might be getting into something that is going to make you uncomfortable, but in the end, it'll all work out.
But it'll all work out. All right. So you're more of dark fiction, yes?
Yeah, dark fiction, dark fantasy.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the program today. It's really been a joy. And
well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, anytime. Actually, like I said, I really want to read Dark Tides. I seriously, when I watched the promo in the video, I was like, oh, why can't this be a movie?
That would be so cool.
Oh my gosh, I know. It'd be all our dreams, I'm telling you. But I'm really excited about that. So I do have that on my list. As far as Rosebound, now my interest is piqued. So I want to thank you again so much for being on today. Thank you all, everybody, for coming into the room continually. It really is just a very supportive environment, and I greatly appreciate it. Everyone have a great night. Thank you again. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye for now.